Hey bookworms, and welcome back. Today I want to talk to you about a book that I just finished reading. It's called The Historian by Elizabeth Costova, and I mentioned it in my video about my 2016 reading list. In case you're interested, I'll link it down below, and you can probably also see a link somewhere around my head as I speak. So, The Historian is about people who are looking for people who are looking for people who stumbled upon this ancient mystery regarding Vlad Tepes, aka Vlad the Impaler, aka Dracula, and his vampire myth. Okay, I do realize it's a strange way to describe a book. How about I'll give it another try? This book opens in the 70s with a young woman who finds a book at her father's study. From this book, she finds out about this mystery. She also hears her father's story about it, gets curious, and decides to investigate it as well. Now, from what it says at the back of the book, she's the protagonist, but it's in reality wasn't true. 99% of this book is her father's story. Her father tells her either himself or through letters about his journey throughout Europe in order to get to the bottom of this mystery, and I will refer to it as a mystery or an ancient mystery because I don't want to get into details because obviously that will be a spoiler. So you go through this journey around Europe, especially Western Europe. He goes to Hungary and Turkey and Bulgaria, and afterwards his daughter also gets curious, and she also goes through this journey to look for the truth, although her journey is a lot shorter, obviously, because most of the book is the father's story. This book has a few timelines. It has the first one, which is, let's call it the present. It sets in the 70s. It's about the daughter and her journey. And there is another one that is in the past around the 50s, and that's the father's story, and that's the main story of this book. And there are also all sorts of narratives of people that they meet along the way that tell them their story. There is a story that happens in the 30s, and people are telling their stories through letters a lot of times, and I'm pretty sure that's a homage to the book Dracula by Bram Stoker, because Dracula is being told in its entirety through letters and diaries and telegrams and so forth. Now I have to say I was really looking forward for this kind of adventure mystery book with a female protagonist. So I feel the need to tell you that it's, I know it's a lie. She's not really the protagonist. The real protagonist is her father. It's a male protagonist. There is nothing wrong with that. But also in his story, which occurs in the 50s, you also get to see another female character, which is pretty cool, so at least we have her. I feel like I should give you some sort of background in case you don't know the story to make things a little clearer, because I was talking about Vlad Tepes and then I was talking about the Dracula myth and the vampire myth. Vlad Tepes was indeed a real person. Tepes means impaler in Romanian. That was kind of his nickname. He was a really cruel leader who lived in the 15th century. He truly had bloodlust. He murdered and tortured people, his own people and his enemies. He boiled them alive. He unskinned them. He did really terrible things. He was mostly famous for impaling people on wooden rods. That's why they called him the Impaler. Now, a few centuries after his death, an Irish author named Bram Stoker wrote one of the most famous books ever written, I think, Dracula, which is about a vampire. I'm pretty sure you know the story. And he really strongly implies in Dracula that the character of Count Dracula the vampire is actually Vlad Tepes, who was a vampire. And after Vlad's death, a lot of people thought that he really was a vampire and he rose from the grave. And obviously Stoker was not the one who invented the whole vampire myth. It was a very common and famous superstition, especially around Western Europe. So we got this kind of a combination of a real person that really truly existed and this kind of myth that was built around him of him being a vampire. And you all know what being a vampire means. I don't need to explain it. And on a more personal note, since we're here, I have a confession that I have some sort of a very big interest in the more bloodier, darker history of our world. Topics like Jack the Ripper, various plagues and serial killers. I just find it very interesting. So the moment I saw that this book was about vampires and Vlad the Impaler, I thought, this book is right up my alley. Now, to those of you who listened to the description of the book and said, that kind of reminded me of a Dan Brown novel, I will say this. Yes, generally it is. I heard a lot of people kind of comparing the two, but I do feel that I have to warn you that even though they both kind of are about, modern people investigating ancient mysteries through, letters and riddles and everything, they're very, very different. While Dan Brown's books, and I do like them, are very lightweight, they're fun, action-filled, you can read them in just a few hours. The Historian is a lot more detailed, a lot, kind of more serious, maybe heavier. It takes a while for it to start. And I feel the need to say it so you won't be disappointed. For me, it took me a while to get into this book, I'll be honest with you. At a certain point, I just thought, why continue reading it? It's not interesting. You're not getting into the story. Let's just close the book, give it away to somebody else, and, read something else. I'm really glad I forced myself to continue reading, because it might take a while for the book to really start, but once you get into it, it will be impossible for you to stop reading. Also, while in Dan Brown's book, it's usually one clue leads to another and then another leads to another. In The Historian, it was more like you got a bunch of information, try to figure something out of it, and then you see in a letter they find a name of a church. So let's just go into the church and hope for the best. Hopefully find something useful there. But it was cool. I felt that it was a little more realistic if you're trying to find something about the past. It's not always, go there and there you find a clue, it's a little more vague. But when you think about it, throughout this book, it didn't really remind me of a Dan Brown book. It reminded me of a quest game, a computer game, adventure, point and click, whatever you want to call it. I think that this book could be a perfect quest game. It kept reminding me of the game Gabriel Knight 2, The Beast Within, which is about werewolves and King Ludwig II from Bavaria. And if you play the game, if you know the game, you probably loved it because it's great, and you probably like The Historian. And if you haven't, then just go ahead and play the game and read the book, and you'll love both of them. Also, the supernatural element in this book is pretty interesting. You start out by knowing that vampires don't really exist. They're just a superstition or a myth. But as the book goes by and you get to meet all sorts of characters who do believe that they are real, you start moving from being skeptic Scully to believer Mulder until I won't tell you if vampires are real or not in this book, although that's not the point. The point of the book is not to find out whether vampires are real and prove their existence or prove that they don't exist. It's not a point, although I can safely say that this is one of the best vampire-related books I've ever read. But now to my complaints. I'm saying complaints plural, but it's actually one big complaint, something that was present throughout this book. Remember at the beginning where I said that people just stumbled upon this mystery? This book is filled with coincidences. Coincidence after coincidence after coincidence, and that's just a little too much coincidences for me. How many times did I say the word coincidence for the past 20 seconds? It seems as if every other character that the protagonist meets, it just happens to know about the vampire Dracula myth, and they're so fascinated by it, so they did their own research, so now they're experts, so they can kind of add to the protagonist's knowledge. And they also happen to be anthropologists or historians, so they have a lot of access to university libraries and a lot of experts in other fields that can contribute to their knowledge. How lucky are they? And these people who are into this mystery literally stumbled upon this mystery. By chance, they kind of found out about it, and you know, it's just a little too much, a little too lucky, if you ask me. Also, it's kind of related. Some of the turning points in this book, some of the plot devices were kind of dumb. It's as if you need the characters to go from point A to point B, but you have no idea, she, the author, she had no idea how to bring those characters from point A to point B, so she just brought this other character who will just tell them something to bring them to point B, and it was a little bit like a very cheap plot device, and also some of them were kind of dumb. And notice please that I'm saying dumb, and some of the things were really dumb, but the book isn't. So somehow she managed to make a really great, interesting, clever book with some dumb turning points. So I don't know, I think that's a point for her, I think. As I mentioned before, the book leads the heroes to this big journey throughout Western Europe, to places that are still communist in the 50s. I personally thought it was very interesting. You know, you say the word communism and I think about the former USSR, but you know, I forgot Romania was also communist at that time. I don't know, I thought it was very interesting. But the book is filled with descriptions of landscapes, of churches, houses, the local food, etc. And this is both good and bad. Fans of the fast-paced books that are action-filled will probably find it a little maybe boring, a little too much descriptions. Although people who appreciate the history lesson that you can learn from books, and that's me, and you probably know it if you follow my videos, people who like to learn about different cultures and they can really appreciate this aspect of the book. You know, kind of you have an American protagonist and he goes and eat Hungarian food, and he eats Turkish food, and it's not like pages and pages of description, but it was very interesting, you know, the way the culture shock and some, you know, you really get to see how, you know, houses are built in different cultures and how the cultures themselves are really different from one another by the way people are using, I don't know, colors or furniture. I don't know, I think it's very interesting. But some people might find it a little too much. But once again, it's not pages and pages of descriptions. I thought it was interesting. It really added some spice to the book. So overall, as you can probably imagine, I really love this book. I'm really glad I gave it another chance and kind of forced myself to continue reading it and not giving up. The ending was also great. It's the kind of ending that leaves you a little bit sad, a little bit happy, but overall a very good ending. Not good as in happy ending, everybody is happy, but you know, towards the end I thought of a few ways in which the book could have ended, and some of them were could have been really disappointing, but I'm glad the book ended the way it does, and I won't say anything more about the ending, obviously. So go ahead and read this book. If you already have, comment below and tell me what you thought about it. And I'm also interested to know, what is your favorite book or computer game which combines history and myth? Something that takes a real person in history or an event in history and combines it or adds to it some sort of a supernatural element or fantasy. So comment down below, tell me what you think, like this video, subscribe to my channel if you dare, and I will see you guys next time. Bye bye.